Hello and welcome to episode 142 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
And I'm James Whittingham. This week we have for you climate misinformation that has exploded on Twitter since the takeover of you-know-who. Well, Elon Musk said it is to blame on Hunter Biden's laptop.
France has finalized their ban on short-haul flights and will also limit private jet travel. Plans to launch a Patreon for the Clean Energy Show private jet fund have been put on hold.
A Texas foundation is doing everything it can to fight renewables in the name of fossil fuels. And as Brian said last week, everything is bigger in Texas, even the lies.
A $21 billion project will link the UK to a solar and wind farm in the Sahara Desert. The project has been delayed as they search for a 2,300-mile extension cord.
All that and more on this week's edition of The Clean Energy Show. And also this week, Mr. Stockton, GM is constantly raising the price of the EVs you were thinking of buying. There is a new IEA, International Energy Report, that's going to blow your renewable doubting uncle's mind. All kinds of other things, too. How are you doing this week? It is a cold one out there where we live in southern Canada.
Super, super cold. I have an update on radon, which is something we haven't talked about in a long time. From the early days of the podcast, we sort of talked about this, and it doesn't technically have anything to do with...
It was originally called the Radon Show, as I recall.
The Radon Show, yeah. So not technically anything to do with clean energy, but it does have to do with the upgrades that I've been making in my house as I try and make it more energy efficient and get rid of fossil fuels and improve the air quality in the house. So I started taking radon measurements a few years ago, and they were like 200 on the scale. If you're below 200 on the scale, it's like you maybe don't have to deal with it or have to deal with it too quickly. If it's above 200 on the scale, and that's parts per million or something, I'm not sure. Radon is a gas you can't see or smell that can seep into your house. And it's particularly bad where we live. And apparently it's related to like uranium in the soil or something, radiation in the soil. And it's a gas that can seep up into your house. And if you breathe enough of it for long enough, you might end up with lung cancer.
Bad.
Yeah, lung cancer is bad. So anyway, when I started doing the readings, they're around 200. So it was like, okay, we'll deal with it, but not a huge hurry. And I bought a radon meter, which I loaned to you, and you checked out your radon.
For several months, right? I had it in my home for, you do it for a long period of time, usually in the winter when it's sealed up.
Yeah, you've got to do it in the winter, and I've run the meter in the summer, and it's not a problem because we just have all the windows open most of the time. But anyway, the number's been creeping up lately, and it's above 400 now.
Ooh, why do you think it's creeping up?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's just one of these things that kind of changes. And I did put, like a couple of years ago, I put in a heat recovery ventilator.
And it's worse now.
It is worse now. Like the ventilator seemed to maybe help at first. That was sort of my guess. I thought the ventilator might be enough to fix the problem, but it wasn't. So we've got the radon guy coming in a couple of weeks, and he's going to put in one of those pipes. They kind of put a pipe down into the soil below your house to vent it to the outside.
So that's in the middle of your house, right? Like they'll put it through your basement floor type of thing?
Yeah, I think maybe where the sump hole is, there's a drainage sump hole. So they'll put in a pipe, they'll put in a fan, that'll hopefully vent it.
So it's constantly sucking air out of underneath your house, basically.
Yeah. So just decided to finally go ahead with that. It'll be about $3,000. And they're going to do it in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, which is ironic because you and your partner are heavy smokers. I wonder if you were, though. I mean, if it would be...
I think the smoke would get you first. I wouldn't worry about it.
You could do something about the radon, though. It's harder to quit smoking. So anyone who's trying to quit smoking out there, you have my sympathies.
Well, I've been trying to quit radon for years now, man. The addiction to radon has got me.
Well, let us know how it goes and describe... if your readings go down and such, we'll keep in touch on that topic. Yeah. So GM is updating the prices. I've been wanting to buy an EV to replace our Prius, and GM has the cheapest ones, the Chevy Bolt. My friends I had breakfast with this morning were talking about getting those. They also said that all their friends here in the Prairie Agricultural Center of Southern Prairies of Canada hate EVs and don't know why, but they do. So it's just a lot of bad things out there. They're both from small towns, so I don't know if that has anything to do with it. So yeah, they announced the Chevy Equinox, small crossover EV, but bigger than the Bolt, and it was supposed to be priced less than the Bolt. And so they lowered the Bolt in the States by quite a bit in price.
Mm-hmm.
They did not do that in Canada where I live. They announced the Equinox at something like $3,300 or $33,000. Then it was $35,000 on their website. Yeah. Then it was $38,000. And I think now it might even be $40,000. So it's constantly going up even before. It's just, I've been monitoring that, and I'm not happy about that because I needed it to be cheaper than the Bolt so that the Bolt price would come down, because I don't want to buy the Bolt if its price is going down. It's kind of bad to buy a used, have a vehicle that's value goes down. But
well, given the demand, like they probably should have priced it on that higher range. Like we all want cheaper EVs, and they're coming. It's just with the demand the way it is right now.
They're trying to make a statement saying, hey, you can get a cheap EV here, but just not now. It's going to take a few years.
Yeah.
So, Brian, last week I disclosed that my beautiful Nissan Leaf from 2013 has no heater.
Yeah.
And as I said, and as we've said many times on the show, to the point of amazement of our listeners, we live in a very cold place. I don't know how stupidly cold it is, but it was minus 21 when I went and took my daughter to school this morning without a heater. Celsius. That is minus.
It's still minus 21 right now.
Minus 4 Fahrenheit. And tonight, Brian, it is going down to minus 35 Celsius, one night only.
Yeah.
For a short period of time, minus 35 Celsius, which is minus 31 Fahrenheit, with, I read on Twitter, a wind chill of minus 52 Celsius.
Yeah,
not that the wind chill affects the cars. It only affects things that evaporate, like your skin.
Yeah.
But that's minus 61 Fahrenheit. Now, a lot of people are just... I can see a lot of our listeners jumping around on one foot right now. It's like, what are you guys doing? And I agree with you. So if there's any listeners out there that will move Brian and I to a warm climate, have some property that we could build on, I'm thinking Hawaii. But,
that would be fantastic.
Hawaii, nice. You can come back to your cottage in the summertime and still be a part of the scene here. But my God, I'm too old for this. It's especially without a heater in my car, because it's a $4,000 fix. So I survived it, though. It was getting to be a challenge. Most of our weather is going to be warmer than this, okay? But this is a brief cold snap. It was a challenge. I bought that little thing from Amazon that blew lukewarm air at the window. Didn't do much at all.
Yeah. And you plug it into the cigarette lighter?
Yeah, it comes on with the car and off with the car, so I never touch it. It's just constantly going when the car is turned on. And it doesn't do much. It's a problem keeping the windows defogged when it's this cold.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow morning. What I am hoping is that it's going to be too cold for my partner's work, because they do transport social work clients around, and it's dangerously cold. So they have a cutoff. I'm hoping to have access to her car, but it's nasty. But you know what, Brian? I am surviving. Surviving. It's my own fault I don't have the money. I'm just eating it, and it's going okay so far.
Do you have to drive around with the windows down
so
that it doesn't
don't talk that way. That could be tomorrow. I do wear, winter clothing and a neck thingy, and, as if I was skiing in the Arctic or something. I do dress warmer. My daughter, on the other hand, not so much. So I'm hoping she dresses warm tomorrow morning, or she's going to be at a popsicle by the time I get her to school. Anyway, there is a new IEA report just hot off the press out this week. It is talking about how renewables are going, and the world is set to add as much renewable power in the next 5 years as it did the whole past 20 years. So basically, the last 20 years is the whole time that I've been thinking about renewables in any significant way, because that's when wind turbines and solar were just starting to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's been a 20-year span, and that's going to all happen again, output-wise, in 5 short years. And, of course, the 5 years after that will be even greater. So, things are going fast. So the global renewable power capacity is now expected to grow by 2,400 gigawatts over the next 5 years, at an amount equal to the entire power capacity of China today. So the entire power capacity of China, everything, coal, everything, nuclear, is going to be what we're going to get in renewables in just 5 years. So that's a pretty significant thing, considering China is one of the major users of electricity. There's not a lot of Chinese around.
That is absolutely amazing and great news.
So this massive expected increase is 30% higher than the amount of growth that was forecast just a year ago. I think that is the headline for us.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big deal. This is 30% more than they, the idea that we talk about all the time on the show, things are taking off, people underestimate things.
Yeah.
And
this is the S curve taking off.
Yeah. And no one is figuring this out. No one is. Unless you listen to our show, then you're smart, of course. Smartest listeners in podcasting, as far as I'm concerned. So renewables are set to account for 90% of global electricity expansion over the next 5 years. So yeah, I'd like to see that 100%, but still, it's basically everything that gets added to the power grid is going to be renewable. 9 out of 10 kilowatts, if you will.
Yeah.
It's going to be the largest source of global electricity by early 2025. And some updates to past stories and things like that I'd like to just touch on again. There's somebody here from the Tesla Owners Club where we live who went cross-country skiing. I caught my eye because this is something I would do if I was healthy and had a Tesla. Yeah. And the two things that I aspire to be. I would go cross-country skiing off somewhere with my Tesla. And she says that she went cross-country skiing on the ski trails. It's 100 kilometers away from the city of Saskatoon. Mm-hmm. We picked up our friend, took the Tesla, skied for a couple of hours, and his wife got chilled. So we were still on the trails, and I got out my phone and turned up the heat in the car. This is without turning on the car. And we got back to the car, and Jan was shivering by that point. And we get in, and we'll load our skis and get in the car, and it was just toasty hot in there. So it was instantly hot. And this is just another, advantage to EVs. You can heat them without turning them on.
Yeah. We, my partner and I, we often go for a walk in the morning around the lake, and I'm always mad at myself. So 5 minutes before the end of the walk, I turn on the heat on the car when it's chilly out. And every once in a while I forget, and I'm so mad at myself. We could just leave the heat on the whole time, but that's a bit wasteful.
Well, you could set it to a cooler temperature, say
just
14, 15 degrees. So that's half decent. I don't know. How long's your walk take?
45 minutes.
Yeah, you could do that. Set it to around 10, 11, 12 degrees Celsius. I don't know. I might do that some days. From Green Car Reports, the U.S. motor clubs, they're known for their roadside service, like American Automobile Association, and Canada, the CAA, it's called, Canadian Automobile Association. They are trying to, get behind EV adoption as best they can. So they have an update to trip services with charging stations now. So if you use their trip service, you will see EV charging stations on them. And more than a decade after launching a mobile EV charging pilot programs, they were right on top of this. This is quite early to be on top of this. AAA is launching a second larger scale program that will offer mobile charging to members in 14 U.S. metropolitan areas. So they're expanding it to 14 big cities in the United States for people in electric cars who run out of electrons, as it were.
Yeah. And of course, they'll deliver you a can of gas as one of their services. But this is something I've definitely been waiting for, and it's something people always ask when they're new to electric vehicles is, what happens when you run out of electricity? And this will be the perfect solution. They'll just come, they'll plug in your car for 5 minutes. They'll give you enough juice to get to a charging station. But currently, you have to get loaded onto a flatbed truck and get towed.
Yeah, and that has not happened to you or I. If you're new to the show, it has not happened to Brian. You did arrive in your driveway with 0% once.
Yes.
So that was kind of touch and go.
That super cold road trip last winter at Christmas time. And that was a little bit dicey, but so far after 2.5 years have never been stranded.
So the worst that I've gotten is about down to 18 kilometers of range, and I've got a short range vehicle. And my city is only 18 kilometers long. I looked at it on the map. So plus they give you extra than what they say. They give you some, and then it starts to ramp down and gets, you can only go at a low speed and you can't accelerate very fast at the very, very end of it. And people have done that on YouTube and experimented, but it's not something I ever expect to do, but it is a nice peace of mind, especially if you're new to EVs and you have, everybody seems to have range anxiety, at least for the first couple of weeks, and then it sort of gets worked out and everything is fine. So if you have a AAA membership, you can, not worry about it. So the charging is for free to AAA members in San Francisco, Indianapolis, Philadelphia, Orlando, Nashville, Charlotte, Denver, Grand Rapids, Michigan. Seems like an odd choice. Okay. Avalon, Peabody, and West Springfield, Massachusetts. Providence, Rhode Island, and Bend and Portland, Oregon. So if you're in those cities, you might want to consider a AAA membership if you have or are thinking of buying an EV and think that they can't do anything for you. Well, now they can. They can. And it's not just towing you to a charger. And plus, remember, all EVs come with a basic charger that you can plug into a regular wall outlet. And I've always, thought like I'd stop at the Wendy's or something that has like a worker plug-in. We have those here. They're more common, but there's plug-ins on the sides of buildings, even restaurants and offices. Or you could just stop at a house, just run it up to the house if it's the middle of the night and you want to be sneaky and get 7 kilometers an hour of charging. The Guardian, Brian Stockton, is out with a new report that claims that Tesla hate is on the rise. Have you found this?
Not personally, no.
Good. I'm almost surprised. Resulting in drivers experiencing more road rage. So that's unfortunate. Tesla drivers interviewed by The Guardian say they have experienced anti-Tesla sentiment, but mostly from those who hate electric vehicles rather than Musk specifically. Random rude drivers will swerve into my lane and yell at me or turn on a heavy diesel exhaust that blows smoke back at me. Paul Albertson, who lives in Beaverton, Oregon, told The Guardian. I don't know what The Guardian's doing in Oregon, but there you have it. It never happens when he drives his two other cars, a vintage 48 Chevy and a 2014 Traverse. And the culprits are most often men driving larger pickup trucks with just a tad too much testosterone.
Yeah. Happened to me once on the highway where I got coal rolled by a big truck who, beefed up their exhaust as they went past me.
And did you pass them? Did you leave them in your dust?
Well, we were going in opposite directions.
I think all Tesla should come with coal rolling capsules or tanks in them to just coal roll them back.
That would be unexpected.
Well, if Elon Musk gets to thinking that way, then, well, I don't know.
Yeah, we had spoken about this a while ago when it was initially proposed, and it has now been finalized. So France is trying to ban short-haul flights. So flying in an airplane uses a lot more carbon than other forms of transportation. And if it's a short flight that can be covered by rail or bus or some other form of transportation, why are we flying? We shouldn't. And so France has stepped up and they have banned short haul commercial flights that can also be covered by rail. So there were 8 routes that they were planning to ban, and they ended up going down to just 3. They had to get this approved from the European Commission. The other ones, they sort of decided, the European Commission decided that maybe there wasn't enough rail transport for long enough hours, that people would be inconvenienced too much if they banned all 8 routes. So they're starting with 3, and I think that will eventually expand. And they're talking about putting limits on private jets. And this is less specific, and I don't know exactly how that's going to play out. But private jets are, of course, are really bad for carbon because, you're only moving like a handful of people around, rich people around the world. Hopping around on private jets is very, very carbon intensive. They're picking on Steven Spielberg in this particular article. This is from Electric. An example of total excess, director Steven Spielberg's private jet reportedly burned more than $116,000 in jet fuel in 2 months this summer. That's 179 tons of CO2 into the air. And this is according to flight tracking data from the ADSB exchange. So rich people flying around the world in private jets, huge source of carbon. And, while we don't have the details yet, France is looking to start putting limits on how many of these flights they're going to allow.
So a private jet can be one person, getting that jet off the ground, or it could be a half dozen people. But it's not a full flight of people. There's the two pilots, which have to go, but they're not really needing to go anywhere. So yeah, it's a high carbon situation. Now I saw I guess a bit of a study, or at least a paper on the France banning thing, and they said that it wasn't going to make that big of a deal because the short haul flights are only 5% of carbon emissions from flights. It's those long haul flights that get you, but maybe the private jet flights are, more significant too. But, the rich people are going to fight back. They have power.
No, and I've got a couple other stories. There was something from, Clean Technica had a report that jet fuel use overall in the U.S. is actually down compared to 2019 before the pandemic. Took a big dip, of course, during the pandemic, and now we're kind of back to a kind of a steady state, but it's a little bit lower than 2019. So it does sound like maybe people are choosing to fly a little bit less.
Yeah, I think some of it has to do with the pandemic.
Which is still,
it's lingering. It still exists, and people are, people like me probably would fly less, even if I had the choice right now to fly.
Yeah.
Just because of that reason. I mean, you came back from a flight and you were full of COVID.
Got a cold, yeah.
Could have been
so
COVID.
yeah, I've flown once in the last 5 or 6 years. But now that I'm retired, I am hoping to fly some more. So I'm starting to kind of look into the idea of maybe, purchasing carbon offsets, which is not, I don't know. It's
a lot of people hate those, man. A lot of people
hate the carbon offsets, but I kind of feel like if I'm going to take a long trip to the UK or something, I'd like to do something to offset the carbon.
Well, there is kayaks, I've got 2 kayaks here I can lend you. Okay. Perfectly good paddles. You get the right wind behind you. Yeah. Maybe make a little sail.
Okay.
Big cooler, you put a big cooler on there. Or a fishing rod if you want to just catch your own fish. And sharks. No, the sharks will eat you quickly. So the Times in the UK says that the number of tweets mentioning the term climate scam have surged following Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter in what one senior UN official called an alarming flood of environmental misinformation that is happening all of a sudden since the takeover. And analysis for the Times has also revealed that 2022 was the worst year for content skeptical of climate change since the social media giant was founded. And we'll talk a little bit how some of that is fueled, ironically, choice of words there, by the fossil fuel industry. They are behind it. Petrostates are also behind it. They want that a lot. So Power Magazine, there are indications that nuclear power could ramp up again in Japan sooner rather than later. Because we've mentioned this before on the show, so I wanted to mention that, it is apparently possibly coming back. Soaring energy costs have forced both a policy rethink by governments toward nuclear and a change in the public's opinion about nuclear after Fukushima. Because, get you in the wallet, you want to maybe consider ramping up some of those closed reactors. My daughter showed me a Brazilian model who is a nuclear influencer last night.
Okay.
She was young, aesthetically pleasing, and dressed like a supermodel, fashion forward, very fashionable. She looks like an influencer, a makeup influencer, I'm living the best life influencer, the type of people. They're not me, Brian. I'm not an influencer. You have to be gorgeous to be an influencer. She's a nuclear influencer. She wants the world to go to nuclear. She's done a TED talk that my daughter was shown in school. She wanted to show it to me, and it made me angry. My daughter regretted showing it to me.
Is she employed by the nuclear industry?
Well, that's what I said, and she claims she's not, but she's also not very articulate. She's not making great arguments either. But she's an influencer, so people listen.
We covered about a year ago a story about the natural gas industry was paying, online influencers to promote natural gas for cooking and stuff.
Yeah, we know that's a scam because it's leaking. It's leaking out of your kitchen right now if you have got natural gas in your kitchen. Yeah, so I thought I'd mention that. Plug-in electric vehicles took 89.3% share of the auto market in Norway in November. Now, since we started the show, we've been gasping at how the percentage of auto sales in Norway has just shot up, and it's peaked because now it's down, because that is actually down from 91.2% year on year. So they peaked and they're coming back down just a tinch now that everybody has got their vehicle or they're waiting for a new one. Or perhaps there's a short supply of them, but that's kind of where it's sitting right now.
Yeah, that includes plug-in hybrids, I believe.
Right, it does. And as does a lot of the, gas car bans by states like California and countries like Canada. And people say, well, you're going to force me to buy an electric car. Well, it's going to be a gas car, but it's going to have a plug-in on it. So you can use it or you can not use it. By then, everyone's going to have one anyway. I can't imagine selling a car in 2035 that doesn't have a plug-in on it. Yeah. So full electric BEVs grew. This is the good news in that story. The full electric, battery electric vehicles grew their share year over year from 73.8 to 81.6, which is fairly significant. So yeah, the plug-in hybrids you speak of are starting to fall off, and people are opting and trusting in battery electric vehicles. And November's best overall seller was the Tesla Model Y. No surprise there.
Yeah.
Now, Brian, the Tesla had their delivery day, they call it.
Yeah.
So it's one of these things that is a Tesla event that you watch online if you're streaming. You watched, of course. It's Tesla shareholder. You own 40% of the company, something like that.
Something like that.
It was interesting to me. It made me feel, because I have such ill feelings about Musk, but he was not doing anything stupid until the show was over. And then he was on Twitter doing something stupid. But I mean, he was talking about the things that he's on this earth to do, and that is to solve the emissions from transportation. And it felt like an old time Tesla event, like I had, chills from it. It's just like really cool stuff going on. So I'll just go over it for you and try to convince you why this is significant. So Tesla has made a 500-mile run in their semi-trailer that has fully loaded. It has a estimated 900 kilowatt-hour battery, which is maybe 9 times the biggest battery in cars, or the bigger batteries in cars, not trucks, but cars. They tend to peak around 100 kilowatt hours. Maybe a bit more. So which would represent the top version of the truck expected to sell $180,000 to $200,000. Okay, this is a big rig semi-truck. A lot of people said this was impossible. This is why this particular thing is important, because it was fully loaded. It did a 500-mile journey. It was only charged to 97%. It had a few percent left over, so there was some buffer in there. And the point is, they put a YouTube video of it up, the whole thing, so in case anyone doubted it, it's there in, I think, fast motion, but it's all there. And the driver took something like one break to go to the bathroom, which is, there was no charging along the way. So all he did is do this with a full load, full semi-load. And they did it. And Bill Gates, other people like him have said, no, this is physically impossible. Nikola, CEO, who's now in jail or whatever, charged.
Yeah.
He said it was against physics. So a lot of people said this was not possible. And a lot of the other truck makers were saying it was not possible. They did it. They did it with the things that you like to talk about, the efficiency of their motors and inverters and things like that. They also did it with Aerodynamics. Okay, so it's a very aerodynamic rig. And they also use, it's important to note, their own designed trailer. So the trailer has to go with it, okay? So it's probably a little bit lighter, but it's also a complement to the aerodynamics of the tractor, okay? So the key unknown is how much the Tesla Semi itself weighs. We don't know that yet, but it must be subtracted from the maximum 82,000 pound gross weight of truck and trailer to get a total payload that the Semi can pull. For if you're an investor, you want to know that number. And for comparison, some of the other people who are making these electric big rigs, VNR has 275 miles, and Freightliner has a model that offers 230 miles, which is less than half. And the Nikola TRE boasts 330 miles of range. So there are other electric things out there. BYD has one. The Chinese automaker has one that has been operating at ports in the west coast of North America for grocery stores, short haul trips, stuff like that. So 500 miles fits pretty nicely with a time at which drivers are mandated to take a 30-minute break after 8 hours of driving, creating a natural time to charge. A 70% charge is set to take 30 minutes.
Yeah, the only issue right now is not enough charging stations. So is there going to be a charger at that exact point where you're supposed to take your 30-minute break? And I think at this point, the answer is no. But obviously, this is early days, and this whole charging infrastructure will get built out.
Now, they are manufacturing these finally. They're, 3 years late, something like that?
Yep, a couple of years late.
They are making them. So they're rolling off the assembly line and getting delivered to Pepsi and Frito-Lay. I saw a Bloomberg opinion piece, which had originally said this was not possible, saying, well, they're doing potato chips, and that's good. It's good because there's lots of things that you can do that are light. Not everything's heavy. But they pulled a full load in that video, so I don't know. The point is, though, that the people who are buying these are having scheduled loads that go from A to B. They know the destination. It's Budweiser Brewery to distribution center A. That's they know how long it is. They know how many trips they make. And they're doing that, and they're going to save money doing it, and they're going to test it, and they're going to give lots of data back. The great thing about these semis is that they're using the electric motors from the Plaid, the performance version of the Model S sedan. So that they didn't invent anything new. They just put 3 motors in there that they already had, which were already efficient. And what I found interesting as kind of a techno geek is that they've geared the one motor to work at highway speed for efficiency. Like you have a first gear, you wouldn't drive in first gear if you had a manual transmission on the highway. You're driving fifth gear. Well, what this is basically like fifth gear. So the motor doesn't have to run at a high RPM. It runs at a low, but you have less torque there. But because they're electric motors, it still has plenty of torque. So when it needs torque, when it needs to go from standstill to driving or up a grade, it will employ 2 more motors, which seamlessly take over without a drop off of the torque. Because it's an electric motor, they can seamlessly take over and add to it. And apparently it's significantly more powerful than diesel. Okay. So this is, right now, if you're a person who drives diesel and you want to drive one, plus it's easy because there's no gears in it. I don't know how many gears there is in a semi. Okay. I'm a bit naive about that, but there's no gears in this, right? So anybody can drive it.
Well, I guess there's technically gears as you're describing them, but it drives like an automatic car.
You don't have to change anything. So in that sense, that's the hardest part of driving a semi, aside from getting around corners. That's, half the battle, and the other half is the gears. So you still have to get around those corners and understand how to drive a trailer in that way. But it seems like, like this is just really good technology that will improve. They call it a step change in big rigs. So each motor has a saying, as it has a Plaid, it can go to 0 to 60 in 20 seconds, which is not impressive. But from a truck that weighs 17 times as much as a full-on electric car, that's pretty good. It's aimed at efficiency and not performance, too. And big rigs, as they pointed out in the presentation, are just 1% of vehicles on U.S. roads, but account for 1/5 of the vehicle emissions. And 36% of the particulate emissions, which is, that's according to Tesla. Particulate emissions is the type that causes smog in cities and bad air quality around highways. They pointed out that if you live near a highway, the future is looking good for you once we get to, get diesel off the road.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So, and also, there's a $40,000 tax credit coming for large electric trucks. So that's going to make the economics case pretty incredible. So, they're going to ramp up to, 50,000 a year in a few years, 2025 or so. But for now, they're going to get out there. The big companies that haul a lot of stuff, the grocery stores, Loblaws in Canada is doing it, Budweiser, Frito-Lay, PepsiCo, and Coke. And they're all going to use these and give feedback from their workers, from the truck drivers, and from just the logistics of it. And they'll put chargers in, hopefully, at their freight locations, at their warehouses. So once you stop, you charge it, you plug it in, unload the vehicle, and then go on your way next time. So
it'll take them a while to ramp up, and I think they're planning to make 50,000 of them in 2024, I think. So throughout the next year, they'll be kind of ramping up their production. So we always wish these things would go faster, but if we think of that 5-year timeline that we were just talking about from the IEA, all the new clean grid energy that's going to come online in the next 5 years, there'll be a significant number of these electric semis on the roads 5 years from now.
And they have, like all electric trucks, they will have sort of instant access to the computer. Like they'll be able to adjust the wheels instantly, unlike with a transmissioned vehicle, like a diesel vehicle. And they say that they'll be able to reduce jackknifing, which is something we see in a winter climate here all the time. It shuts down highways.
I saw one just a week ago on my drive to Moose Jaw, and there was a semi-trailer. I mean, I didn't see it go in, but there was a semi-trailer on its side in the ditch between the two highways. And, it was just a little windy and a little icy, and you're done.
So I look at the road report for the area when it's when there's a winter storm, and there's all these little demarcations like, jackknife semis use alternate route, and because they're blocking the road and they you can't get them out. Sometimes they cause pileups. So hopefully that will be, trucks are dangerous on the highway. Hopefully this gets made safer. There was no talk, by the way, of automation for driving or, autopilot or anything like that yet. We'll see what's coming with that.
Yeah. And of course, we didn't get quite enough information about it, but the charging infrastructure. So this is supposed to charge at up to 1 megawatt.
Yeah, this is something we've been speculating on the whole time of this podcast, right? And it's 1 megawatt is the answer. 4
times as much juice as the typical 250 kilowatt Tesla charger, and they revealed that the Cybertruck is going to use the same guts, so it could potentially charge up to 1 megawatt with a 1,000 volt architecture. So this is the next version of the fast charging from Tesla, and I want to hear more about it. But sounds
it's
great.
Very interesting. Yeah, we sort of get frustratingly little details. They just put out nuggets kind of awkwardly, and we have to sort of wait for them to be filled in from a tweet, usually.
Yeah.
It's going to be incredible. And the Cybertruck as a fleet, as a company tool too, like the pickup truck, if you can charge that, that's going to open up more use patterns for it if it can charge at 1 megawatt, because that will fill up pretty fast. And, the connectors, we were talking about how the rest of the auto industry settled on a megawatt connector for trucks, but it's big. Mm-hmm. The Tesla one, Brian, is not. It is impossibly small, I would say. And it's got water right into the cables, apparently, to cool them. Like water circulates right through the copper.
Although, again, I wasn't quite clear if this was a new connector for the Semi.
I believe it is.
So it is a larger connector than the other one.
But they've also referred to it as version 4. So you'd have to wonder if that's coming to other cars, like if, a Model S 2 years from now might have this as well. We don't know. But it could be, which would make it very interesting. And Tesla would have a big advantage.
Well, we picked a good time to make a podcast about clean energy and transportation because there's just tons of exciting stuff going on.
Yeah, and it's something we've been anticipating. So, by the way, I just wanted to say that, how people are always saying electric cars will burn and what Tesla Semi, there's also Tesla Semi burning jokes because they're electric, because they're battery electric. Well, there was a car that burned like 2 blocks from me. The person died, like hit a pole in the morning and it blew up. Gas cars go on fire way more often than electric.
Way more often. Okay, so a story here from North Carolina. It's about a power outage. So they're into their 3rd day without power in Moore County in North Carolina. I just thought this was interesting because it was damage to the substations from intentional sabotage with firearms. So basically somebody went in and shot up some substations with guns.
Wow.
So this is proving to be a very difficult thing to fix. And they've been without power for 3 days now in this county in North Carolina, 42,000 people, 34,000 utility customers in this county. And because of the damage, this could actually go on for several more days.
Wow. I wonder if we'll see this again or if this is a one-off instance, but it's truly weird when power outages never happen on purpose.
Yeah.
It is an exceptional thing here that you're talking about. And sometimes, there'll be an accident, a truck or something will hit a pole.
Mm-hmm.
Another argument for banning guns if you're in that side of the argument. We have to ban guns because they're causing power outages. It's okay. The murders are okay, but the power outages, well, that affects everyone. Rich and poor. So, from the New York Times, the Texas group is waging a national crusade against climate action. The New York Times has a huge piece, which I will put in our show notes, and it'll be free for you because I have a subscription. It'll be a gift link. The Texas Public Policy Foundation is shaping laws, running influence campaigns, and taking legal action. They're backing legal action with their own money in a bid to promote fossil fuels. They bankrolled a lawsuit to halt a offshore wind development on the U.S. northeast coast. Something we talked about a few weeks ago on the show. These were the guys behind it. It was the fossil fuel industry was trying to create all the fuss and the delays. And I've got a clip here that's coming up in a second. That's just, get out the Clean Energy Show defibrillator, Brian, because we're going to need it. Clear? We should have a Clean Energy Show branded defibrillator because this is just everyone sit down. If you're listening at home, sit down, calm down, because this is going to make you angry. So the fishing companies that were challenging the federal permits for wind turbines off of New England were actually funded by this Texas foundation who's fossil fuel funded. And they featured a bearded fisherman with a distinct New England accent. And here's a short clip of that New England fisherman supposedly talking.
Once these platforms are put in place, that ground is lost forever. So you're sacrificing hundreds of years of production of food for a 25-year plan that is bound to fail. They haven't worked anywhere in the world.
Just going to leave some dead air there for a second. Wind turbines have not worked anywhere in the world. You heard it here first.
I need the defibrillator.
Sorry. There's a bit of a shot for you. Yeah, it's just... It's going to make the fish go away for hundreds of years for something that hasn't worked anywhere in the world.
Well, don't the fish have, fish the fish somewhere else.
Yeah, the fish, they do study these things, the impact on fish, and it's not nothing, but they don't make the fish go away. That's ridiculous. It's all nonsense.
Yeah.
And even after Democrats in Congress passed the biggest climate law in the United States in history, this summer, the organization is undaunted and is continuing its efforts to highlight the myriad forces working to keep oil, gas, and coal companies in business. In Arizona, the Texas Public Policy Foundation, if you ever hear that word again, cringe because it is cringeworthy, campaigned to keep open one of the biggest fossil fuel coal plants in the West. In Colorado, it called for looser restrictions on hydraulic fracturing. And in Texas, the group crafted the first so-called energy boycott law to punish financial institutions that want to scale back their investments in fossil fuel projects. So yeah, you can't, it's a free country unless you do something against fossil fuels. Freedom, except you don't have a choice if you don't want to fund fossil fuels. We have to have a law for that. So they got behind that list. It's just insane, Brian. It's insane. And we're at a critical point where we can't have any delays. We can't screw around. We can't let these people win in any way, shape, or form. You have to fight back, people. At the same time, the Texas Public Policy Foundation has spread misinformation about climate science. Nice. With YouTube videos, regular appearances on Fox and Friends, well, that's a surprise, and social media campaigns, the group's executives have sought to convince lawmakers and the public that a transition away from oil, gas, and coal would be harmful to Americans. Yeah, right. Well, just the stupid people are going to listen to you. This is a good topic for John Oliver on HBO. Last week tonight, this would be a good thing for him. They have frequently seized on current events to promote dubious narratives, pinning high gasoline prices on President Biden's climate policies, which is bogus, of course.
Which haven't really even been enacted yet.
Economists say that's not the driver, or claiming the 2021 blackout in Texas was the result of unreliable wind energy. They were the people behind that. We talked about that on the show before. Screw them.
Yeah. That was a big news story that we talked about on the show, and it was kind of like you could sort of definitely source out both viewpoints on that. If you're a fossil fuel person and you Google it in a certain way, you can, reinforce your belief that it was clean energy that caused those blackouts in Texas. But that's certainly not what we reported on and not what we believe to be.
No, I mean, they've studied it. It's natural gas was the big. I mean, there was some wind turbines that failed because they didn't have de-icing technology. Well, that was the fault of, I guess, the utility. They thought that they would never use it. It would be a 1 in 50-year event. So, well, the event happened and they were caught with their pants down.
Yeah. Yes, which is related to climate change because it's making the weather a bit more weird than it normally would be and leading to these events.
And that event was caused by climate change. So it's not just global warming. It's a change in the climate. Things that don't normally happen are happening, or very rare events are happening more often.
Okay, so recently on the show, we reported on a project that would connect Ireland and France, their electricity grids, so that they could exchange electricity back and forth between Ireland and France. And but which, in itself was sort of surprising because that's a fair distance. But speaking of distance, the UK is going to now put in an undersea cable linked to a solar and wind farm in the Sahara Desert, which, I'm not
the whole thing's going to be under the ocean between...
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, the Sahara Desert. And I'm not a big geography guy.
No.
I don't know a lot about geography.
Nothing, really.
It's, one of my weakest categories on Jeopardy.
Okay.
But man, this is far. So this is 2,300 miles or 3,800 kilometers. So this was announced a while ago, and I think we just didn't catch it at the time that it was announced. But this current story in The Guardian is about a delay to this project. So it's going to cost 18 billion pounds, which I think is around $21 billion. And but it's now going to be delayed by a year. It's going to be coming into force sometime around 2027, I believe. But it's a year later than they had originally planned.
So that's the Sahara Desert in Africa all the way to the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
Underwater.
Yeah.
So 3,800 kilometers. If I think about driving down a highway at 100 kilometers an hour highway speed, that's 38 hours. So that would be...
Yeah, New York to LA, maybe, something like that.
But at the same time, it's actually, to me, actually closer than maybe I thought. Because, you don't associate the UK being anywhere near the Sahara Desert, but...
I would have just assumed that this is the thing that is not possible because it's too far away.
Yeah, that's really remarkable. And if this is happening now, and there's one from Australia to Singapore, right? I don't know how that compares, but this is, how renewables work. People say, not enough sunshine in the UK for solar. Well, fine, we'll run a... We'll run a cable, and apparently it's cost effective to the Sahara, where there's gobs of sunshine because it's at the equator, just high solar potential. Wow. And you're not really wasting land because it's the desert, right?
And the cable's just under the water. But it's very surprising it's even possible.
It is surprising, Brian. Let's get to the tweet of the week. This is coming from the CEO of Cruise. Cruise is GM's self-driving robotaxi technology company. Okay, so they've got robotaxis in a couple of places. And Kyle Vogt. Kyle Vogt. Okay. He says the press says things like AVs are overhyped and are still, autonomous vehicles are overhyped and still 5 to 10 years away. And us here at Cruise, we say this moment there are 100 Cruise autonomous vehicles in driverless mode in San Francisco, and many currently carrying passengers. So they had a map, which you can see here, Brian, of all the autonomous vehicles driving in San Francisco at night. Yeah, so it's, people, a lot of naysayers of autonomous vehicles, but then I always say, look at, they're there. There's autonomous vehicles driving without people right now, and they are working. They may not be working as great as they need to be, but they're not killing anyone. And they're not delaying too much traffic.
No, and if we talk again about that 5-year timeline, which we've been talking about on this episode, I would imagine, a lot on the road in a 5 years' time.
Well, it is finally time for the lightning round, a fast-paced look at the week in clean energy and climate news to round off this week's show. From the China EV Post and Bloomberg, VW is set to export China-made EVs to Europe. This is after Tesla and BMW are doing the same thing, so they're making the models cheaper in China and then shipping them to Europe. Any thoughts?
Well, it's probably a good strategy, although, Apple made an announcement. Well, I don't know if it was an announcement, but There was a story this week about Apple trying to move their production out of China due to the uncertainties in China. So that's probably the main thing they have to contend
Yeah, there's
with.
been a lot of COVID absolute shutdowns just to have zero tolerance, and it's been causing probably part of the reason why we don't have some of the things we need for our cars here.
Yeah.
From Drive Tesla Canada, nearly 2/3 of Ford dealerships in their network have opted to go for the EV certification program. They have to spend lots of money to do this. Earlier this year, Ford announced their EV certification program, giving their dealer network the option to decide if they want to continue to sell electric vehicles. The decision to opt in came with several commitments, including to spend as much as $1.2 million, which is nothing for a dealership, and to add EV infrastructure, okay, and among other things. And they will only sell their EVs at a non-negotiable price. So EVs at Ford, you won't have to worry about haggling. I love that.
Yeah, no, it's always been a real problem. And as we move into a more internet age for buying automobiles, it's something that the legacy automakers are going to have to deal with. A lot of people aren't crazy about their dealerships. And I wanted to mention, too, that Ford has now sold 150,000 Mustang Mach-E's. And I believe they're coming in second to Tesla in the U.S., not so much in the rest of the world, but 150,000 Mustang Mach-E electric vehicles, which is impressive.
Yeah, I mean, we don't give Ford enough credit. They don't get enough credit in this space. They're producing. There are Ford trucks, Lightning all-electric trucks driving around. So that's pretty cool. We need more, but they are coming through. 11% of new vehicle sales globally are 100% electric, according to Clean Technica. So we're at 11% globally, and this is 100% electric. Tesla Model Y and 3 have the top two spots, but the spots that are 3 to 8 are occupied by Chinese automakers, Brian. And then at number 9 is VW ID4, which is kind of a so-so EV.
I believe that BYD is second to Tesla worldwide. There was a chart on Clean Technica recently. So Tesla's making the most pure EVs. BYD is second. SAIC, I don't know what that is. It's third.
Yeah, that's one of the Chinese
and
automakers. But I have here the number 3 selling vehicle. Okay, model-wise, not brand-wise, but model-wise. The Y and the 3 are number 1. And then the Mini EV, which is, you're looking at it here, it's tiny.
Yeah.
We talked about it on the show before because I think it starts around $15,000. No, you can get one for $4,000 US in China.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit of a golf cart.
Yeah, it is a bit of a golf cart, but apparently people love them and they're customizing them and making them their own. And the Mini EV can seat 4 people. It has standard features, including air conditioning. You'd think air conditioning would be $4,000 by itself, practically. Power windows, a stereo system, storage, yay.
Yeah.
Early models do not include a driver airbag, so that's kind of unfortunate. But later models, such as the Mini EV Macaron, include the feature as standard. So yeah, airbags I would want to have in my car, especially a tiny car. And that had the cheapest car in China, and they're selling them like crazy. So they must have a reputation of reliability. There must be a dealer network for servicing them. But really, you can put 4 people in them, but just too comfortably, I would say. But really, it's all you need. And I'm sure they're very cheap to operate. I mean, I think their batteries are half of what the Leaf is, but they still can get around because they're so small. So GM is opening a CMI plant in Ingersoll, Canada. It is Canada's first EV production facility to build BrightDrop Zevo delivery vans. Now, when I heard of this on the news, I was picturing sort of a Ford Transit, but these are bigger. These are fairly substantial vehicles. They're basically small trucks.
It's sort of like a cube van sized kind of delivery vehicle. It looks great.
It does. It looks fantastic. It'd be cool to see things like that on the road. They expect them to produce up to 50,000 of these suckers every year by 2025.
Yeah. No, this is a big deal. And the plant's already open. There was a big ceremony with the Prime Minister, and this is great.
It is. And, so many little stories that we do, 10,000 here, 50,000 there. This is going to put a dent in oil pretty quick. I think in a few years from now, we're going to start to see some serious dent in oil demand. So, it's time for CS Clean Energy Show Fast Fact. From Shannon Asaka, climate reporter for the Washington Post. People born in 1950 will have 2 times higher carbon footprints over the course of their lives than people born in 2020, just because of how the U.S. energy mix has already changed. This applies to the United States. If the U.S. meets its climate goals, then that number will be down even further. So that's interesting.
Yeah, well, all of that huge capacity the IEA was telling us about coming online, the grid, everything gets cleaner every year.
So Ford, speaking of Ford doubled their EV sales in November on a year-over-year basis. So not only are they putting them out, they're ramping up. So that's good news from them. Police unlawfully spied on children as young as 10 taking part in a climate strike protest in London. Documents have shown. The previously unseen papers revealed the Metropolitan Police there were rebuked by the Information Commissioner's Office for video surveillance of a March 2019 climate protest, which was attended by up to 10,000 children protesting lack of work on climate change and young people as well. Turkey's installed solar capacity has gone from virtually nothing a decade ago to 9 gigawatts in 2022. So nothing to basically 9 nuclear reactors worth at its peak output midday. You can't build nuclear reactors in a decade, Brian, but you can throw up a bunch of solar. It just goes to show. Pretty quick ramp up there. Toyota, sadly, plans to offer a bunch of EVs, but only in Europe. Yeah, way to go, Toyota. So the BZ and BZ branded EVs are coming, 5 of them, to Europe by 2026, but not here, not in North America, not anywhere else, just Europe. That's often the case, isn't it? A lot of times people just put all their EVs in Europe before anywhere else. From LA, Los Angeles Times. Los Angeles voted 12-0 to ban new drilling in the city and close all of its 5,000 existing oil and gas wells. Remember, we talked about this on the show before, how there's oil wells in the middle of LA and how they're interestingly covered up by buildings and architectural structures.
You can drive past them and see them. There's featured prominently in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. There's a nice shot of a drive-in.
But they're still there in the middle of the city. It's crazy, but they've banned it. So they do have to get rid of them eventually. I think it's... they have 20 years to close them. But still, they're on their way out. They're going to be ripped up and moved, which couldn't happen soon enough. From Bloomberg, a group of children and young adults, including Greta Thunberg, have filed a class action lawsuit against the Swedish state for failing to take adequate measures to stop climate change. The lawsuit is part of an international wave of climate-related legal action. Brian, when you want something done, get a lawyer.
I'm a big fan of legal action to save the planet.
And finally this week, from London, their ultra-low emission zone is now going to cover the entire city next year. Remember how you have a low emission zone, you can't drive diesel or certain vehicles inside the city center without paying a $5 fee day, or £12.50 pounds. But older high emission vehicles have been charged this in their this zone, but now it's going to span not just central London and its inner boroughs, but all those going out to the edge of the city. So London will charge motorists citywide to drive more polluting vehicles, expanding devices policy that's improved air quality noticeably and accelerated the transition to electric vehicles. 2 good things, Brian.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I remember last summer, I don't often ride my bike in sort of crowded traffic areas. Like I'm usually riding on a trail or in the park or something, but I had to ride my bike last summer where there was a lot of traffic and oh man, it was horrible. It was horrible.
The policy will extend to the city's outer reaches in August of next year, affecting about 15% of vehicles in the area, newly becoming part of the zone. So very interesting, good for them, and good, I'd love to see air starting to clean up. It's nice. Climate change doesn't get solved very quickly, but air pollution can. And that's a beautiful thing, especially when it has terrible health effects. That is our show for this week. We like to hear from you. We love to hear from you. We live to hear from you. So please get out your pen now and contact us at cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. That is our email address, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. We're on Twitter, TikTok, Clean Energy Pod. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel to see visual representations of Brian and I of this podcast production. Or leave a voicemail at speakpipe.com/Clean Energy Show. And consider donating to the show using the PayPal donate button, which is now in your show notes and on our website. And I want to personally thank the people who donated last week. We were genuinely touched by your generosity, and thank you so much. You know, we put out the show every week and throw it out into the ether and don't always hear a lot back. We see the downloads and the countries and everybody participating. But for people to care about the show, that they actually throw money at us, I mean, thank you. That's it keeps us going, and we really appreciate it. So if you're new to the show, remember to subscribe on your favorite podcast app to get new episodes delivered every week. And we'll see you next week.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, and see you next week.